So I've been doing some thinking because after I made my video yesterday, the thought that kept coming up is, well, if I'm willing to be wrong, why am I not letting go of maybe Ezra Eagle is just wrong? And I've been sitting with that ever since yesterday. And I realized today something that years and years ago, like 8 years ago maybe, when I was studying in Revelation, and it's talking about the fourth beast and being more great and terrible. Like, as I had been studying that for several days in a row, I had a horrifying, to me at the time, understanding of, oh my gosh, this is the United States. That is like, this is us. And I couldn't wrap my head around how, like, I couldn't place the pieces with like the heads and the horns and like all of that kind of stuff, but I knew that that was accurate. And I've heard, I don't know who it was, but somebody had made the connection between Ezra Eagle and the fourth beast of Revelation, and that was like a match. And I think maybe that's a little bit more why I'm holding on to it, still willing to be wrong, but I'm still waiting. I'm not so fast to throw it out quite yet. And one of the other things that makes me more willing to hold on to that is understanding the role of the apocryphal books. So back before, I want to say 1600s, it might have been 1500s, all of those apocryphal books were spread out through the Bible, like in their places. And then in the 1600s, I want to say it was the Protestants, I don't remember specifically, but somebody who had power to do something, they went through and they did not like those books. They didn't think that they were authoritative because they weren't in original Hebrew. And so they took all those books and they like squished them together and they put them in between the Old Testament, New Testament. And that's where they sat for the longest time. And then sometime in the 1800s, I want to say it was the Bible Society. I don't remember who it was, but in the 1800s, I think Bible Society, but whoever it was, like voted the Apocrypha out of the Bible completely altogether. And so once upon a time, these were considered legitimate scriptures. And some group of people decided, well, we don't think that they should be considered legitimate scriptures, even though that they had been used and followed by the early Christians for forever. And then somebody else decided that, you know what, we think that this is so wrong, we're just going to pull them out altogether. And so, like, who decides that gets to happen? You know, they were put in the Bible for a reason. And so, I don't know. That's for me why I am really willing to give this more time. There is one thing, though, that had actually been bothering me up until a couple weeks ago that I realized I forgot to mention at the time when I was having my huge epiphany, because one of the things that had been bothering me was the idea of the second short feather being sooner away than the first, because of that would mean that something would have to happen to Biden before the swearing in of Donald Trump, before we knew that that was who won, before whoever won the election at the time. And I just thought, okay, well, what does that look like? You know, he's old, maybe he'll die, you know, but then I had the epiphany of like, wait a second, being plucked up is different than a short feather, although Biden's, you know, short feather. So, you know, that could still apply to him, but what does that look like? And one of the things that I realized is sooner away than the first, if we're looking at this, and which I am now, and I get that this isn't a popular idea, but if the way that we look at this is the eagle is the fourth beast, and it's that time of the deep state, and it's the deep state who's creating the short feathers, then Biden being sooner away than Trump's first term, and even Trump's first term, is because of deep state shenanigans. And so do we base that off of the time of inauguration, or is that based on the time of like the vote of the people? And so could you say that Biden is sooner away than Trump? Well, yeah, because if we're going by the time of the vote or even the time of inauguration, but like let's either, you could use either as a point for this. Trump was a short feather as of the inauguration or as of the time of the vote. Either way, he was a short feather because of the deep state. Okay, well, Biden, he's a short feather. Is he sooner away than Trump? Well, we don't know. Inauguration, I think, is tomorrow or whenever that is. Like, what is it? I don't even know what today is. It's like, it's in the next day or two from when I'm making this video. And so it's like, based on inauguration day, probably not. But if you're looking at it from the deep state concept, Biden didn't even get to the election. The deep state literally took him out from being the person who was on the ballot. He was sooner away than Trump because Trump made it to the election at his first term when he was like trying for his second term. He made it to the election and Biden did not. And I know that that's a stretch, but it does qualify. And again, these things, I'm reminded time and time again, things are going to look different than what we're expecting. And that looks different than what we're expecting. And I know that it's easy to say, it's like, oh, well, I'm seeing things to verify my bias. That might be true. I don't know. It might be true, but it still fits. And so again, how many billions of times I'll say this, we're not going to know until we look back at the whole thing when everything's said and done and say, oh, this is how it worked out. And it worked out exactly like it was written, or it didn't. And so, history is the teller of that. And right now we're not in the history of it. We're in the making of it. So we don't know. But anyway, that was something that I had realized I'd left out because it kind of goes with this whole, why am I not so willing to let go of this, because so many people are. And I realized I had not included that when I had originally had my epiphany of, wait a second, if we're looking at this in terms of like, it's the deep state, that I think was a word that I was having a hard time coming up with, the deep state or the UN or just whoever the powers are that be, the elites, whatever you want to call it. It's like the president makers, that was one actually that I've heard a few years ago. I'm like, oh, that's an interesting way to talk about it. All of that, just if we consider it in those parameters, then I really think that this is still completely active. And again, just watch and see and just be aware. So I just wanted to add that, since again, see, I'm already talking in circles because it's over, it's done, because I said what I needed to say. So I'm done. And yeah, there you go. Have a great day.